And we're live.
Excellent. How are you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Come back from France, which was absolutely lovely. And as soon as I hit Britain, I came down with some kind of nasty chest infection. So it's no good for you being here. I don't recommend it. It's the weather's not good enough.
A
So
nasty
yeah,
chest infection. Ooh, that does not sound good.
no, it's not good.
But you're
Flare up from
podcasting,
COVID as
so
well, which I also caught in London. So it doesn't seem like London's doing my health any good. How's California
COVID.
treating you?
I don't have any of those symptoms.
That's good.
It was 115 degrees the other day, but
Wow,
things are good, man. Things are good. So can't
great.
complain. It's beautiful summer. I was actually in England up the road from you, and we never even connected
I
because you
know.
were going to Italy or some amazing place.
France, I think.
And
Yeah. That's
France, and
yeah,
I
we
was
visit.
there. You were in France, and such is life. But yeah, it was a great time. So
It was.
beautiful summer.
Yeah, absolutely. So now the summer's coming to an end, and maybe the summer in e-commerce is drawing to a close as well, and we're entering some interesting times. So we're going to be talking about pricing today. One of your specialist subjects. Obviously, you brought
Hmm.
out Pricing Power recently, the book. An overlooked topic. So we're going to talk about three problem areas today, I believe. Is that right?
Mm, yeah, let me jump into it here, and we'll start the podcast officially. As is our custom, we'll record this live. If you're watching with us live, feel free to ask questions in the comments. We'd love to weave your questions into the scenario. So let me start the top of the show here. Setting prices can be incredibly challenging. Sometimes you have to be a price taker and take what the market gives you. Other times you can be a price setter and you can do it with confidence. The reality is there are three big challenges with setting prices that we want to talk about in today's show, but we're also going to explain how you can be a pricing genius, not to be too hyperbolic in the intro here, how you can be a pricing genius in spite of these three challenges. So we're going to make this quick because Michael's sick and my co-host is going to limp through this here, I think. But Michael, I'm really excited to record this session with you. So you gonna be able to hang in here with me, buddy?
I think so. Yeah, I shall just mute myself and not splutter at people too much. But yeah, I like the idea of being a price maker, not a price taker. I mean, that's something that many Amazon or market-based sellers can only dream of. So, without going in a rabbit hole, tell me a little bit
Yeah,
about the difference there and how you
yeah.
think you become one or the other.
Well, that's a classic economics phrase, price taking, price making. So the difference there is you have pricing power if you can make the prices what you want, and you don't have pricing power if you have to take what the market will give you. And so those are really classic economics, terms. And so yeah, we want to be price makers. We want to be able to say, here's our price point, and it helps our business succeed, and customers will pay for it. And so that's the gist of the whole premise behind the pricing power book is how do you put yourself in the position to be a price maker, not a price taker. And so, but it's challenging, as we all know, because there are obstacles in our way, and so we want to talk about three of those today. Yeah. Yeah, the reality is, according to psychological research and pricing research is done, there's a guy named Ernest Weber who's done a lot of research in this regard. There is no absolute price for any product. And I think we'll know this if we kind of put our consumer hat on. But if we're managing a business and trying to set prices, we want it to be, $17.99 is the perfect price. But the reality is for consumers, the economists have tested things and they've realized that what actually happens in the mind of the consumer is that there's a range of prices. And so the range of prices is what customers think about in their mindset. Ooh, Michael, I think people are saying hello, but they're also saying I think on StreamYard you were muted that last conversation. So
Yeah, you gave a beautiful answer, but I was not muted on calling, so you heard the question, but the people on StreamYard didn't hear the question. So the difference was, I better ask you this question because we can put it into the recording, which is now going to be fun to edit. So what is the first of the three unfortunate facts? The answer is there's no perfect price, I think.
there is no perfect price. That is the first unfortunate reality psychologists and economists have figured out what a customer does is says in their mind, there's a range of prices I'm willing to pay for something. It doesn't matter what it is, a cup of coffee or a car or a new computer or phone, lawn care service, or the guy who's going to, put chlorine in your pool every week. There's a range of prices that we say in our minds, oh, that's fair. And in that range, what happens is the buyer gets into a buyer frenzy. Like if they need it, they'll buy it because it's in that range, and it reduces their psychological kind of overwhelm, and they don't have to think about it. They just say, I need this. It's in the price range that my mind says is acceptable. I'm pulling the trigger on the purchase. And so that's good news, bad news. Good news is if you operate in that range, you're fine. But bad news is a lot of times that range isn't fun profit wise. And if you think about Howard Schultz, back in the 70s, a cup of coffee was like 59 cents or whatever, and he did not want to operate in that price range. And so, the drama ensues. Like how do you get out of that channel of pricing when you want to kind of explore higher prices and be more profitable? And I'm going to give a couple answers in this conversation.
Great.
So
Well,
we'll talk about how to be the genius pricer in a moment, but this is one of the problems is, you don't want to be in the range of acceptable pricing. Usually you want to be higher price than that,
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the problems coming into the current situation is that for a lot of people, their cost prices for the sellers will be such that if they sold at their preferred consumer's selling price, i.e., the retail price, it might actually have zero profit or loss built into it, right? So actually, premium pricing now could simply mean profit pricing as opposed to just selling at break even or worse. I mean, I think an awful lot of the planet's in that situation, right? So certainly in the UK. One question about the perfect. Oh, sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to say exactly right. I mean, what's the efficient market theory is that there is a perfect, the perfect, price point that moves the goods. Well, there's no profit in that system. It's it's optimized for super efficiency, not for you to make a good living. And so that's the drama, and that's what we have to manage, and we have to do it professionally and well. And that's the whole gist of these ideas. Yeah.
So one question that springs to mind for me is, how about finding the perfect price experimentally using software? So obviously repricing tools for resellers have been used a lot for years. Obviously one of our sponsors, Eva, runs the repricing for private label goods. So harder to implement technically, but possible. How does that factor in your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's one of the ways in which you can discover the price optimal outcome for you. All things being equal, the price optimal outcome for a consumer is the lower the price, the better. They would like it for free. Thank you very much. They'd even like you to pay them to actually take your product. That's the price optimal outcome for the consumer. But the question is, what's the price optimal outcome for the seller? And that's where we really find these nuances. So a lot of times what the pricing algorithm or tools will teach you, if you do an A/B test for your pricing on Shopify, or if you do serial testing on Amazon with your price points, what you can discover is that you can sell at a higher price and you'll have less velocity, less transactions will flow through, but you'll end up optimizing for profit. And that's a very, very interesting set of tests to do. And what it makes you realize is that just selling more isn't the answer. Selling the appropriate priced amount that gives you a profit and getting it sold, at that price is the optimal outcome for you. And so the software tools absolutely allow you to do that, or at least test your way into it. And if you can figure out how to put your prices a bit higher, but still maintain some velocity to get your quantities moving, then you've got an opportunity there to also have profit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple of thoughts on that. One is, with private label sellers, I've always seen, because you have to order in bulk and you have to hold inventory for quite a long time, there's always a really terrible payoff, a reality between the amount of turnover speed, in other words, how long are you going to hang on to your inventory for, which has a working capital implication or cash flow implication, versus profit. And those two things are in a great tension. They're not exactly in opposite directions, but there is a great tension between them. So I think you have to be realistic about that if that's your business model right now. The other thing is talking about sort of pricing ranges that you were talking about. I think A/B testing often reveals, doesn't it, that you can creep towards the top of your pricing range, as you said, if you get more profit per unit, but fewer units sold, and you can creep towards the bottom of it and sell more units at less profit. But it's still going to work within a range, I guess. I mean, you can't. I mean, it sounds like an obvious point to make, but I see people put a bit too much faith in A/B testing. It will show you what the market thinks of your product, perhaps more granularly than you would have done organically, but it won't make your brand more valuable and more, convert at a higher price point, or or just convert better, in my experience.
Yeah.
So in other words, it's not a brand changer.
Totally agree. Yeah, absolutely right. And there's reasons for that. And so we'll talk about that in a couple minutes here. So let's talk about this. The second unfortunate.
Well, the second unfortunate fact. It sounds like a Sherlock Holmes mystery. I like it. The 3 unfortunate facts of Mr. D. Miles.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The reality is, the second unfortunate fact is that customers anticipate pricing discounts. And it's really an interesting exercise to ask yourself as a seller, are you pricing your products for your best customers that repeatedly buy all the time? Or are you pricing your products for the first time unaware and unknowing buyer, kind of the brand new to you buyer? And the reality is, it's easy to price for the brand new, unaware of your prior activities buyer. And it's a lot harder to price for your best customers, because your best customers know what you do. They pay attention, especially the super price conscious ones. And as we go into a recession, a lot of people think we're in one right now. The price conscious shoppers really rise to the occasion, and they pay attention. And if they're a loyal customer of yours, they'll remember when you had a sale. And a lot of times they'll remember more than you will. Like, well, have we put this on sale before? I can't remember. Did we? I don't know. Maybe it was 6 months ago. Oh no, that was 3 years ago. Well, you don't even remember this stuff, but the customer remembers, and they will anticipate the discount. So if you think you're smart by making a Black Friday sale every November, just realize the customer's anticipating that fact. Because if you're being super obvious and just very kind of autopilot, change it on certain days, whatever, customers will pay attention to that. And therefore, what that means is they will not buy your product at the higher price, at the normal price. They'll wait for it to go on sale. And that cat and mouse game with your buyers is really, really interesting to think through. And so it's just a difficult reality that your best customers, especially the price sensitive ones, will pay attention. You will have to justify, at least in their mind, what in the world you're doing with your prices. And they'll anticipate the best deal for them, that's going to come up in the future.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on that. I think a lot of retailers have trained their buyers to expect sales. Some of them, horrendous percentage of the time. There's something I only really see when I visit relatives who have TV at Christmas in UK, DFS, and they pretty much, whenever I've seen an advert, it's a furniture store that's been in business for years, so it must work to some degree. They always have discounts. I've never seen a season in which they don't have discounts somehow on everything, which begs the question of whether they just go with the absolute legal definition of minimum definition of a price before discounting it. And that strikes me as a pretty good way of destroying your pricing power. And other extreme, really great brands like Chanel, I understand, will sort of leave 1 or 2 bottles of each type of perfume in any given store that stores their products, high street store or even online if they have good control. But they never really allow great plentifulness of the stock, such that it's always kind of at a premium. It's always quite, what's the word, restricted in amount. So that strikes me as a much smarter way of doing it. How do you begin to build that kind of sophistication into an online version of your business?
Well, I think the first thing you do is really make sure you pay attention to when you do discounts, how you do it. Have a Google sheet or some kind of tracking document that says, we put this item on sale on June 1st, and the price was da da da. and just keep track is the first thing. Just have a history of your pricing decisions for your product, and so you can look back, because you know how it is in mental shortcut in your mind. You're like, what can I do to make some money? Oh, I'll put something on sale. Oh, what should I put on sale? Oh, this item. Have I done that before? I don't remember, but whatever. I need money, so I'm gonna, that's how we operate sometimes. It's like fly by the seat of your pants pricing, and that is not optimal. So
I'm absolutely with you that. By the way, apologies if you're listening live. I'm just having to unmute and mute twice, but you don't want me coughing in your ear. I think one of the things I see a huge amount is that people rely on Amazon to tell them what their price has been historically, which is really inaccurate a lot of the time, or just it does the data's actually not stored, at least not in any easy way to retrieve. So yeah, tracking your pricing I think is absolutely basic, but you're right, a lot of us don't do it, and we've all done that short-term dash to cash. So what's this third unfortunate fact about pricing?
And Lizeth just asked in the comments a great question, which I'm going to add as like our fourth unfortunate fact, which we'll talk about. But the third unfortunate fact is, and don't worry, guys, we're going to have some suggestions, positive strategies for being pricing genius in a moment. So we'll get to the good stuff here. But the third unfortunate fact is customers also anticipate the price increases. So it's the reverse side of the coin of them anticipating the price discounting. They'll anticipate the price increases. And when they anticipate the price increases, they do just the opposite behavior. So they know you're going to raise the price. So what do they do in that situation? They buy early. They'll buy today if they know you're going to raise the price tomorrow. So you got to be really, really thoughtful about when you do price increases. If you do them every January 1st, for example, guess what December is going to look like for you? A wonderful sales month, because everyone will be anticipating the price increase. People do this all the time. And it's really a cat and mouse game that we have to think about. How are we raising our prices, and how do we do it in such a way that customers don't just beat us at our own game and just buy early, with the discount, today's discount, which is your today's price. And so that's the opposite side of the coin that you have to manage for.
So one thing that strikes me that's actually good news, and I know we're going to get onto more good news in a minute, is an inflationary environment generally. So all the news they're getting from whatever news sources, plus their experience, is training customers to expect prices to go up. So they're going to be quicker to jump on what they think of as a good bargain now in anticipation of a rising price. Of course, the bad news is that consumer squeeze in consumer discretionary spending means that they're going to be possibly dumping your brand in favor of something cheaper. So these are the two sides. But I think at least if we can take advantage of that and build it into our own mentality about creating a sort of rhythm of pricing, I think now is quite a good time to be able to do that, actually.
I would just say that as it relates to inflation, that is the pernicious situation. It's good on the one hand, like let's say we know housing prices are going to go up by 15% or 20% next year because of inflation. Like it's just going to happen. Well, we should buy a better house, or our house, our first house, whatever it is we should buy today. But if the sellers know that as well, then on their side, they're going to be ready, willing, and able to just ratchet those prices right up. Oh, inflation's on the rise. Everyone can raise prices. I too shall raise prices. And so you get in this spiral where it really can be like a death spiral, or a negative feedback loop. So that's the challenge, and I think we're in that obviously in the U.S. And I was shocked, to be honest, about being in England this last month. The number one thing that stood out to me as it relates to pricing.
What's that?
The prices in England for food, I'm not even joking, probably half the price for a normal item if you just picked it up off the shelf for what we pay in the US. It is radical. It was noticeable. And I was like, what in the world? We are paying so much here for food. And in England, I was like, this stuff's all on sale. It's like on clearance pricing. It was crazy how big a difference it was in my mind when we went to the little, to the grocery store and started picking up items. It was It was very, very striking. So anyway, so just a side commentary.
Interesting.
England, if
Yeah.
England follows the U.S. in terms of inflationary pricing for food, your pricing is going to double. I tell you that
Yeah.
because
Well,
our
that's
pricing isn't going to fall by half. I can guarantee you
no, it
that.
isn't. No, I think there are a couple of factors behind that. One is that supermarkets really dominate the food industry here. So, as a percentage of income, Brits
Mhm.
have over the last sort of 30 years or so paid the lowest percentage of their income on food compared to anyone else in Europe. And that's partly because maybe we traditionally don't value it as much as the French or Italians, which I could say is true from my experience of their culture. But I
Mhm.
think it's partly because the suppliers of the raw ingredients, milk or whatever, have been
Mhm.
squeezed to death.
Mhm.
However, what that means is that we've got a very low base from which it's shooting up very quickly, which of course people aren't used to. So the other thing that tells me is that whatever you're used to is what you think of as normal. You think of it as shockingly low here. I think of it as
Mhm.
normal. If it
Mhm.
goes up 30%, everyone up in arms and there'll be riots in the streets, whereas you'll be saying, hey, that's 70% cheaper than my bill. What are you
No,
complaining
I'll
about? So
I'll be saying there's still another 25% for it to go up, you know?
yeah,
I mean, it's like
probably
it
true.
hasn't gone up high enough, it's gone up 30%. But yeah, that's to the point of this whole idea because we become sensitive to our own normalized pricing for us, and yeah, it can be psychologically painful. Yeah.
So we were going to talk about the coming back to Lizeth has got a question that you wanted to raise, which I thought was a
Yeah.
good one as well. So do you want
Yeah.
to read that one out, and I'll see if I can put my Amazon hat on here.
Yeah, and I've got some thoughts on this one as well. It's a great question, which is what do you do when Amazon deactivates a listing or suggests a price that won't even pay their own fees or like a price they recommend a price that is non-logical to you.
Hmm.
And we talked in prior podcast conversations, Michael, about the number one pricing power tool. I think it's a prior episode just before this one. The number one pricing power tool that you have as a seller is location. And on the e-commerce side, that means you have the options to sell on Shopify direct to consumer. You can sell on eBay, you can sell on Etsy, you can sell on Walmart, you can sell on a Mercari Libre, you can sell on Poshmark, OfferUp, Craigslist. You can, if you choose, sell on Amazon as well. The question is, where do you get the optimal price outcome in those marketplaces? And so location is really part of the answer. The answer isn't to fiddle around in Amazon in such a way that you make them do what you want to do. Now, maybe there is a technical solution Michael knows of, but the truth from a macro perspective is location broadly and having the options to sell in different places creates pricing power. Michael, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, so Liz, sorry to hear of your pain there, if that's you. It really depends on why Amazon's doing it. There's got to be a few different reasons. So if you can pop into the comments why, then I might be able to troubleshoot it a bit further. But to your point, Jason, I guess the only thing technically that strikes me that's an obvious one is if you are selling it cheaper somewhere else on the web, then you're asking for Amazon to
Mm-hmm.
basically not deactivate your listing, but you'll lose the buy box, which effectively means you'll lose 80% of your traffic and 80% of your sales.
Yeah.
Other than that, you are vulnerable to Amazon's little way sometimes, which aren't extremely obvious why. And to your point, I think it's another reason to consider, getting your own D2C site
Mm-hmm.
up
Mm-hmm.
and running, which is a different strategy and a different question. But any specific questions, then ask. But I imagine there'll be more than one Amazon seller experiencing this kind of thing in the next while
Yeah.
because Amazon will effectively implement its own ideas of price controls, which they don't advertise, they don't discuss in the national press or media, aren't
Mm-hmm.
discussed in the House of Congress, but they suddenly decide to implement their own kind of. We used to have a thing called the Price Commission, which my father-in-law worked for in the 1970s, and they kind of create their own one in times of what they think of as national crisis. That
Mm-hmm.
certainly seemed to happen in pandemic, right? So I think sometimes you just don't know that they've decided these policies,
Yeah.
and that's just the luck of the draw.
Yeah.
So tell us about the good news then. So we've talked about the problems a great deal. What are the solutions to these things? How do we remedy these challenges?
Yeah, there are three things that you can do that I'd want to mention today and really encourage everybody with. The first one is you have the opportunity to create a unique selling proposition that will really, really help your pricing strategy. And I know this is kind of an odd uh, set of items to push together. Most of us have heard of the phrase unique selling proposition, USP. We've heard that in the context of branding and then a context of kind of creating your presentation on the internet, that kind of thing. And we haven't really tied it back into your pricing strategy. But I want to just remind everybody that that second word there is selling, the unique selling proposition. And so, because a lot of times we think, oh, create a USP. Okay, I want to be the brand known as, I don't know, something, we just make it up in our mind. But the reality is, what you really want to do with your USP is figure out what the customer would see as valuable in what you're doing, and find the synergy related to what the customer would validate and support with higher prices. And so, how do you do that? It's complicated, but there are ways to do it. One way to do it is, for example, will a customer pay for an item because it's local, made local, sourced local? This is becoming very, very true in food. Customers will pay a premium if it's local, and organic. And so if you're in the food category, you know that there's a pricing premium for local and organic. I bought some honey, not long ago, and it was made locally. And in the honey world, they say, if you buy local honey and eat local honey, it'll help your allergies, because I don't know, the bees have got the pollen from the local plants, and you're eating it, and somehow your allergies will help. So you see how it's a selling positioning tool that justifies a higher price point. That USP of being the locally sourced item underscores this reason why you should pay for it, and even pay for it as a premium. So that's one angle. That is it local, and can that be the thing you use to charge for a higher price? But there are other angles as well. And the thing that you want to think through is, what could you do with your product to create that kind of unique angle? As we mentioned, I was just in England. We wanted to see gardens of England, the famous gardens of England. And so we had our Google, we're Googling around, and we're like looking on the internet, and we're looking at TripAdvisors and stuff like that, asking people, like, what are the best gardens to go to? And people would give us their advice. Well, we heard that Blenheim Palace is the birthplace of Winston Churchill, and they have beautiful gardens there. But really what we heard was birthplace of Winston Churchill. Like 150 times we heard birthplace of Winston Churchill. So we went there, and it was a total disappointment. The gardens were just hardly, it was like a local park, your local city park. It was like they had big trees. That was their claim to fame in terms of the gardening stuff. It was a total bust, but it was really expensive to get into. And of course, we walked through the palace, and it was like, whatever. But they had clearly dominated the unique selling proposition with this birthplace of Winston Churchill branding and idea. And it got us to go. It got us to take a half day. And all things being equal, if I could go back over, the trip, I would have not gone there, and I would have found a cool, actual, real garden that was, a proper British garden that was really impressive, because we did see some, but they were really not that easy to find, and they weren't really marketed that well. So you get the idea. You want to have a unique selling proposition that does the job, but of course you don't want to dissatisfy your customer. You don't want them to have a bad experience, like, oh, they said this was going to be, something, and it turned out to not be. You don't want to disappoint. You want to find something that it has truth to it, and attracts the right kind of buyer, and they're willing to pay the kind of the premium price for it. So that USP piece, to me, is a huge way to justify pricing.
So first of all, let's reflect on your British experience. I think that's a typical sort of British tourist experience, that they brand. I guess a lot of what Britain has to offer is really just a kind of brand name, perhaps for Anglophile Americans particularly, or other people who think it's all about history. And Winston Churchill was an impressive character, by the way. Mother was American, I think, so sort of an Anglo-American himself. That he, Blenheim Palace is very famous. I've never thought of it as a garden, and now I that feeling is reinforced. And but the other thing to reflect on, of course, is just because you've hooked somebody and got them to pay once doesn't mean that's a great idea, because you're now living effectively a negative review online. Albeit it won't really affect that many people, unless listeners were planning to pop into Blenheim Palace next week. But in a place like Amazon, that's a bad idea. On any Shopify, so that's not a good idea. So I guess that there's got to be a message to product match, right? They got the message incredibly strong, but they got they got something misaligned between your expectations and what you got. So again, if you want to build a strong brand, you've got to make sure you line those up, right? So it's never just about, all I would say to reflect on that is, it's never just about marketing. It's marketing plus product, and product development needs to tie in with understanding the consumer, I would say. Talking about the food examples make me think of an awful thing. I've just been in France, and so they're obsessed with great food, and there are lots and lots and lots of different types of USPs that you can build in, some of which don't sit so easily in a sort of mass-produced online type product. I mean, sort of handmade, traditional materials, genuine manufacturing process. You can have elements of those, I think. Gluten-free, hypoallergenics are safe for people with all sorts of intolerances these days, and they're equivalent in, you know, other things. I don't know, for example, cleaning materials. And then there's that kind of the other thing that the Europeans are obsessed with. You know, the wine is only allowed to be called a Bordeaux wine if it's from a certain region. Champagne is, you know, if it's anywhere outside the Champagne region, you can't call it champagne. It's fizzy wine, even though it's basically champagne. And there's a sort of, that's a really hard to engineer kind of trust and quality brand identity, but that's the ultimate defensible thing, I think, because I can imagine that champagne sales may go down over the recession. I'm sure they will. I don't see the price necessarily going down because people want it to be expensive in a way. So how do we start to, you know, implement this stuff? How do we really create a brand that has that kind of pricing power?
Yep, it starts with, you know, an obsession with your customer's desire for the specific product that you're offering, and really thinking through, what does that look like? How do you put it together? What will they and won't they pay for? What do they see value in? Those are all just amazing questions to sort of nerd out over as you start to work on how your USP can support your pricing. So there are other ways you can be a genius pricer. Let me mention them. But first, before that, let me return our conversation to Lizette's question earlier, which was Amazon's proposing ridiculous pricing because for some reason. And we asked her why. And her comment is she thought that in retail stores, the prices were lower. So this is very interesting. We had a client, Michael, who was very successful on Amazon, and then thought, why not also sell on Chewy? Because it was a pet related product. And so she started selling on Chewy. And on Chewy, they were pretty liberal with their management of the prices, and they would put stuff on discount or sale. And when they did that, Amazon immediately cottoned onto it and said, well, they would just affect her price. I mean, it was like Amazon was clear they were not going to be undersold by Chewy. And so they would, I don't know that they suspended listings, but it was clearly, you know, flagged up as like, this is a problem. And the Chewy people were basically like not really, they were kind of cavalier about it. They weren't really supportive. And so ultimately she stopped selling on Chewy. And so Lizeth, if your product or the product that you're selling is out in retail spaces, listed on the internet for a lower price, Amazon will demand price parity. And so you won't be able to have it if you control it. You won't be able to have it out in a retail setting or other marketplaces at a lower price, and having Amazon have to sell the higher priced version. They won't do it. So, Michael, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. You have a different take on it, but that's what I've seen at least. So.
No, 100%. I've seen this many times. I mean, I think one question I would have, obviously for Lizette, but also for anyone listening, is if you're reselling a product, you have to be realistic about what you engage in. Retail arbitrage, as coined by our friend Chris Green, means a difference in price between two different markets for the same product or service, right? That's what arbitrage is. And if you are in a market where you are pricing higher than it is elsewhere, then there's not a particularly great reason why somebody should buy from you. And okay, if you can get away with it, then why not? That's not particularly bad. But Amazon is not in the business of enabling that. Amazon wants to be, if not exactly always the lowest cost provider, it's seen as the value provider, right? And that's their branding, that's their positioning in the market. They're not always the cheapest. Stuff is cheaper on eBay quite often, but that you're swimming against the tide. You're swimming against the tide of a mighty river called Amazon. Don't do it. I mean, it's just not a winning strategy. If it's a private label product, then you need to get control of where your products are being distributed. It may be that people are buying them and reselling them illegally in some way, in which case my advice is to keep it simple and do a couple of things. One is to send a cease and desist letter if you can find who they are and get some contact details. That's often effective. The second one is to go and buy the available stock. And, if they're selling on Amazon, then doesn't sound like it's the same issue, but finding the stock, buying it, trying to flag up as many flags with the different marketplaces that's being sold to, that it's not authentic or whatever it is, or just buy the stock and keep it, because it's destroying your value, your pricing power. So a few thoughts.
One other thought in that regard, and I think this works, Michael, but you could also create a new listing and have it be a kitted product, add something to it, sell the item plus a rubber band, or plus a screwdriver, or plus a whatever it is that adds incremental value. Then you're selling two items and you're out of the ASIN that's in conflict, because it's really not the same item that you're selling, and that will give you your pricing discretion back.
Absolutely. One last tweak to that idea, which is that makes a lot of sense, and that could be difficult to implement physically, a bit of work, but definitely a good plan. Another thought, and you should go and read up about this, Liz Ethel, or anyone else in this situation. There's something to do with I think called the first sale doctrine, but I remember speaking to CJ Rosenbaum, who's a New York-based lawyer who specializes in Amazon sellers. And if you offer a guarantee or warranty of some kind linked with the product, and you make sure you're clear about that, then if somebody sells that product without warranty, then technically they're kind of not selling the same product. I'm a bit vague about the details, so you'd have to go and read up about it and make sure you educate yourself properly and fully about it. But bottom line is, if you're having to do lots of funny tricks like this, that's probably a sign that the market you're in is not a great market to be in, I would suggest as well. So there you go.
Back to our list here. We've got another way to create Pricing Genius. Two more to go. And so let me mention the next one. The next one is you can create your own anchors. Now, an anchor in pricing economics terms is this mental signpost or milestone that the customer has in their mind about what is an appropriate price for your item. That's the anchor price. So, for example, if you say, hey, I want a compact car in the United States, and really it's just for my kid to drive, and I don't want to spend a lot. What price comes to my mind? $25,000 US. Okay, I want a luxury vehicle. It's going to be super amazing, maybe a European. What price comes to my mind? Oh, six figures, definitely. So those are anchors, so you will live your life as a price setter in the environment of anchors. They are there in the mind of the customer. The only question is, do you control them? And the genius sellers control them. And so the classic example of this is the high-end luxury purse sellers. And I always like this example. I use it too much, but high-end luxury purse sellers, you go in and there's like the Birkin bag or something like that. It's like a $34,000 purse, wow, $34,000 purse. Who in their right mind would pay for that purse? I don't know, but there's one sitting next to it for $499. I'll buy that one, but then you just realize, wow, I just paid $500 for a purse. Now, I'm not a purse buyer per se, and so this is not a market that I actually spend money in, but you get the idea. If you can create an anchor, then you have created the psychological space in which the customer is evaluating your products. And so how do you do this? Well, the long and the short of it is you create a high-priced product. And you create a high-priced product because the high-priced product creates an anchor for your other products. So, how often does the super high-end luxury item sell? I don't know, but I know there are a lot of Ferrari t-shirts that sell, a lot of Ferrari hats that sell, a lot of Ferrari sweatshirts that sell. How many Ferraris sell? Well, they might make more off their merch than they do off their cars. I'm not sure, but you get the idea. you create the high priced item and it gives you cover or the context in which the normal priced item makes more sense to the customer. So, Michael, what are your thoughts on anchors, controlling them? If you have other examples that you like or come to your mind, but love your thought on it.
Yeah, a few. I mean, not very e-commerce specific, but if you location, as we talked about in the past, or the context things are incredibly important. So to your purse, or as we call it, a handbag, I guess.
Hmm.
Example, if you walk into certain stores in Oxford Street, or I guess in the right locations in New York or wherever, then you kind of expect incredibly high prices because everything else around is high price. The decor, the reputation, the brand will push you towards expecting that. Obviously, online with your own website, you can gradually, after a huge amount of work, build towards that. Unfortunately, on an Amazon sort of in an Amazon or marketplace context, it's hard to engineer, because basically you're vulnerable to whatever Amazon stacks against you in the search engine rankings, and they don't really stack like with like. It's whatever sells a lot relative to a keyword, right? So you could put a word handbag in if you're really insane and try and rank for the word handbag. But even luxury handbag in the Amazon world, luxury might mean anything from 50, $100 upwards, I guess,
Hmm.
instead of 5,000. So I think you need to do everything you can, if you do sell on Amazon or any marketplace, to engineer to get away from the search engine results page as the comparison just before the actual buying point. So even an Amazon store is a lot better than Amazon search engine page. And if you can
Hmm.
build a reputation within a narrow niche such that people do click through to your Amazon store, and you sell a lot of stuff for $300, then $50 looks cheap, etc. And you can do that within an Amazon listing with parent-child relationships. So if you have variations, if you have it's going to have to be of the same kind of product, so it's much less sophisticated than a fashion store or something, for example.
Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
sell, I don't know, silk neckties, you could sell one for $300 and then one for 50, one for 35, and the 35 looks cheap in that context. And
Hmm.
that certainly is something I've seen my clients do to a limited degree, and it works very well when they do it. It's just work to implement it. But again, this is where I think, in the end, this is the true power of having your own store and creating your own context
Hmm.
within that world. You can create your own anchors, and you just can't really do that to a powerful level in a marketplace. It's just the customers kind of create the anchors, although they're allowed to and enabled by Amazon. But I think,
Yeah.
to your point, you're really a price taker, not a price maker in that
No, I
context.
mean, I I would
This
say
case,
the best way to be the price maker is to do the versioning that you described, and you said your clients that do it, or in the context in which they can do it, they see success, and that's classic. You've got that. This happens at so many industries. You've got the ultra premium edition signed by the autographed edition copy or whatever it is, and platinum, gold, made with real diamonds, whatever it is. And then you've got the kind of like the economy version. That is classic. That car makers started doing that a long time ago. I'm sure many other people pioneered it as well, but you too can apply that to private label branding. Have a premium or luxury edition, and Apple does that with all of its devices. And it's a very, very common pricing strategy. And that is the way in which you can create your anchor in that bubble or in your little set. To your point, Michael. So like on your brand page is way better presentation of that than in the BSR rankings, where people wouldn't see the premium edition. They might just see the economy edition. Okay, let's move on though, because we got one more to cover, if it's all right.
hmm.
And that is another way to be a pricing genius is to create a discount club for your buyers. And we've helped people implement this. We have this system in our own, e-commerce environment, and this works. So basically, what you're doing is you're saying to your entire community, "Here's the way in which you can get a discount in an ongoing way. It's called Amazon Prime, or it's called whatever membership program name you want to call it. Call it your discount club, call it your loyalty and rewards club. Now some of these can be free, like a loyalty program, but others can be paid, where people will give you $100 to be in the discount club, and then they get a standing discount. That is very easy to execute on Shopify, impossible to execute on Amazon. I think. I mean, I don't know any way to do that, but you absolutely can do it in Shopify, and it creates the environment in which you're giving the customer what they want. You're saying, you want a discount? Here's a discount. Let's have fun together. Like let's sell some stuff and buy some stuff, and you create a good time out of it. And customers can be really really responsive to discount clubs or membership pricing, that kind of thing. And so it's definitely something to look into. If you can set it up for your business with your customers, you can do really well and bake in their loyalty and their commitment and repeat purchases, and even have it be profitable as a line item in your business, just because you set it up and you charge people to be a part of it. In essence, it's a product. It's a virtual product that has no cost of goods. It has future imposed discounts on your items. It's very interesting economics all wrapped up in there.
Absolutely. I know that Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's right-hand man for decades now, Berkshire Hathaway is a massive fan of Costco. I think you're obviously a massive fan because you mention it very frequently.
Yeah.
And I guess that having that cash flow from the membership coming in all the time is a beautiful thing if you can engineer it. I think for most physical product sellers, I suspect that's going to be hard to do, but you'd have to be very niched, and I guess you'd have to be definitely selling in your own well-branded channels. I think for those who sell on Amazon, there are a couple of elements of this which is not quite the same thing. Obviously, the most obvious thing is subscribe and save on Amazon, and that does increase average order value. I suspect that for most Amazon sellers, that's underused. I think most people tend to look at it as as a sort of optional extra, whereas Amazon tends to push it pretty hard. And most stuff as a consumer on Amazon, I've seen recently, anything that can be subscribe and save, I've seen, for me personally, they're offering as an option before the one-off purchase. So they're really pushing it. They're trying to make it the default thing. So obviously that can increase average order value and increase, future cash flow and the relationship between how much it costs you to get the customer and the value of it, etc. So that's all worth doing. The second thing, more strategic point around that, is to think really hard, especially if you're going to sell on a marketplace, because cross-selling, upselling, downselling, and future purchases are all so hard to engineer compared to your own site. To really consider hard what product lines you could have or add that can be subscribe and save. If you sell, dog bowls, why not sell dog shampoo, for example? I mean, it's a simple idea, but it's really important. And the only other thing really on Amazon is that you could, in theory, and I've not seen anyone do this yet, but there's nothing to stop you having marketing assets outside of Amazon which capture email addresses or any other form of contact, SMS, for example, and that you could then effectively have a sort of informal discount club, but they buy on Amazon. The difficulty with that, of course, is they go to Amazon, and Amazon itself is going to offer them something better value than you can offer, and they get distracted to buy somebody else's stuff. So you can sort of take bits of it off Amazon, but I think, again, this is a great reason to run your own store in the longer term, because it's so hard to implement this stuff off that. I mean, you've had clients that have done, both sold on marketplaces and have tried to work towards their own D2C side. Have you found people that have managed to implement these things off their own D2C site, or is it always got to be under your control?
It's easiest under your control. The subscribe and save functionality on Shopify is really, really good. There are, recurring, rebuying tools or, subscribe and save tools, apps that work great. And we have clients that use them. Every week when we log in, we're like, how many subscribe and save customers do you have now? It's like goes up, 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 up. And the only question is, how long do they stay in the program? What's the churn rate? But that's a great thing. It's really a fourth idea here, but it's a bit different than a discount club, but it's simpler to implement, actually. And it works really well in addition. So yeah, I would say, those are valuable reasons to have a Shopify site and build a brand and to sell direct to consumers. Absolutely. Well, man, I know that you're struggling through here with your voice. Hopefully you'll be back to 100% health soon. Let me wrap the show up here. If you're listening on the live recordings of this on the social media platforms, thank you so much. Feel free to comment underneath if you're listening via recording. And of course, if you're listening to this in Spotify or Apple Podcast Player or wherever pods are cast, then we would love your subscription, your highest review, and I'd love to have you check out the other episodes. Scroll back in time. We have done a ton on pricing. We've also done shows on, of course, all other aspects of e-commerce. There's always a new wrinkle, a new angle to talk about, and we love to do that. So thank you so much for supporting the show. Really is an honor. If you want to check out more of Michael's work, you could do that at the what? AmazingFBA.com. Is that the
It's
right?
amazing. So the podcast is at amazingfba.com, where you can also get access to the 10K Collective podcast. It's pretty much the same content these days. And we've just hit, collectively between the Amazing FBA podcast, 10K Collective podcast, and the e-commerce leader this summer, we quietly passed 1 million downloads over the lifetime of all of those.
Wow.
We're well into 6 figures with the e-commerce leader as well. So there's plenty of people out there listening. So come join the party. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, for supporting the show. It's really an honor. We love talking about e-commerce stuff. And of course, it's great to have you jump in with us and ask questions live. So anyway, all that to say, really appreciate your support for the show, and we'll wrap it up here.
Take care, guys.